Hey, thanks for coming back. This is Sean Burke and the Sean Burke Show. On the screen with me is Dr. Joe Varon. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him while he sits there. He went to medical school at one of the oldest, I did a little research on this gentleman, one of the oldest medical schools in the Americas down in Mexico City. The Darden Medical School was founded in 1553. Pretty impressive. Did his internship at George Washington University, residency at Stanford, a medical fellowship in critical care and pulmonary medicine at Baylor. He's contributed more than 800 peer-reviewed journal articles, 10 full textbooks, and 8 dozen book chapters to the medical literature. And I'm telling you this, folks, because it's important for you to listen to him, because this is an expert. We had our show last week with Dr. Paul Merrick that you can go to seanburke.net and you'll find that also on YouTube. He's also one of the top doctors in the world that is talking about this. We're going to be talking about the Math Plus protocol for treating COVID. Now, Dr. Varon has kindly given us some time. He is literally swamped in their ICU and has taken time to come talk to us right now. He is a professor of acute and continuing care at the University of Texas Health Science Center. He's also the chief of staff and chief of critical care at United Memorial Medical Center in Houston, which actually I've learned is a fairly small hospital, but he set it up to have a dedicated COVID-19 care unit. Now, the information we're going to talk about today can be found at covid19criticalcare.com. You can see it on the screen. You should go there. That is where all the information is. And by the way, there's no money exchanging hands between me and the doctor. There's no one paying anybody to get this information out. And none of this is medical advice. Just so you know, we're going to talk a lot about medicine, but it's not medical advice. Now, I'm honored to have him on our show because literally in the last 3 days, he's been on NPR, The Atlantic ran a story, and the BBC was there running a story. His colleagues have told me he's done well over 100 interviews and has been very gracious to open his hospital to the media so people can understand what's going on. So Dr. Varon, thank you very much for being on the show and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I just want to ask, I did read the Army came in a couple of weeks ago and set up a tent outside with personnel to help your hospital. Is that still current?
Well, what we did is we basically opened a wing for them, and a wing that has a capability from between 35 and 50 beds, and we allocated it to the Army. Initially, I was hoping that the Army was coming in to kind of give me a hand in the sense of, helping me out, because I have been working for 134 continuous days, and
Wow.
it's been quite heavy. But what we decided to do was to us keep our side of the hospital and then give them a side of the hospital so they could help us with the overflow of patients that were being referred to our hospital from outside facilities. So we're basically, the way I call it is a hospital within a hospital, and we're trying to keep it separated, even though all the data, we're combining it.
So it's helpful. It's helpful that they're there to back you up.
Absolutely, and and they are very nice people. Some of them are very knowledgeable and very easy to get along with. I mean, it's not I was expecting them to be a little more, how could I say it, stiff, but they are very easygoing, super easygoing. I actually am very pleased to have them here.
That's awesome. I just also want to point out, because you had mentioned to me earlier off screen about we as Americans, people should know you have dual citizenship, a Mexican citizenship and the U.S. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. Excellent. So you mentioned to me also off air, you've had around 250 patients come into your hospital with around 13 to 14 deaths. You don't have the exact number on you right today. Around a 95% success rate. We're going to talk about that, folks. Also, go back to the Dr. Merrick video. He goes over very extensively detailed what COVID is, what it does to your body, and what this treatment is. But we're going to skip that. We don't have time to do that. We don't need to do that. I want to cut to the chase. Tell us where you're at today. I know that Houston has been inundated, one of the hottest spots in the country in the last few weeks. What's happening today?
Well, I'll tell you that the last few weeks have been terrible. I mean, I can tell you that in a period of 4 weeks, I have admitted more patients than in the prior 3 months altogether. And not only that, the severity of illness, that means how sick people are when they come to the hospital, is 10 times what it was before. Part of that may be related that people are just, they don't want to go to the hospital. They don't want to go to the hospital because a lot of them, first, they get concerned that they're going to get COVID, even though they already have it. And number two, they think they're going to die. And to be honest with you, some of them will die. So a lot of people just don't want to come to the hospital. My hospital cares for a lot of indigent patients, a lot of patients that are in this country in, you know, I would say unusual migratory form, and they are concerned that they're going to come to a hospital and then we're going to call ICE or we're going to call immigration or somebody, and then they're going to be kicked out of a hospital. So those are the reasons why we're having that delay of patients coming in. A lot of people have asked me, is it that the virus has mutated or changed? Is that why people are sicker? From my standpoint, I think that people are just coming in late. And that is extremely important, especially when you talk about the Math Plus protocol, because we know that the protocol works beautifully if you started early on the course of these patients. I can tell you, I have 100% success rate for several months. And the reason why I had 100% success rate was that these patients were coming in early. But the last month and a half or so, patients are coming in late.
Let's talk about that. I think it's important for people to understand the cycle of this disease. And again, I don't mean to push it, but go to the show with Dr. Merrick that I just did last week, because we go over graphs and the whole deal. But this is a disease that it hits you with the coronavirus. You get the virus, it starts a reaction within the body, and the body starts fighting back. Correct? And then we get into different phases. Can you just walk us through, because that coming to the hospital at the right time is crucial. So let's talk to people about that.
So it's fairly straightforward, and the simplest way I put it is that the earlier you come, the better off you are. Remember those places that I spoke about where the coronavirus is going to hit you. One is going to be inflammation, the other one is going to be clotting. If you can get the early inflammatory part of the illness, you're going to be much better. And if you come on the late part, when now you don't have inflammation, now you have scarring. And, there is not coming back from scarring. Let's just be clear on that. So we have to get you early. The earlier we get you, the better off you are. And people says, well, what is early? I would tell people, any symptom that you have, particularly respiratory symptoms, such as shortness of breath, persistent cough, you are not feeling well, you have the fever, the chills, things like that, you need to seek medical advice.
Do you suggest these oximeters, these little units I have that you put on the end of your finger?
I mean, when we were overwhelmed and, there were no places in the ER to put patients, and I had patients in their cars waiting to be seen in the ER. I mean, that bad we were. I would tell you yes, because the moment the oxygen levels drop under those conditions, I would tell you, hey, you really need to get in, because that's when we need to start you on the Math Plus protocol. And as I said before, and Math Plus, if you start it at the right time, you can have 100% success rate. My problem with COVID is that it's such a tricky illness. It's an illness that will stab you in the back. And people say, well, I don't feel that bad to go to the hospital. You never know, because overnight you can go from feeling just a little bad to dying. I've had patients that literally stand up to walk to the restroom and they fall dead. This is an illness that you don't play with. This is an illness that you have to control. And I mean, for God's sake, we have treatment options. This is something that we didn't have before. We now have treatment options. And forget about the vaccine and forget about the antivirals. I mean, it's nice if you get them and it's nice to put everything in concert. But in reality, if I can control what the virus is doing to you at an early stage, you're going to leave the hospital alive.
So first we have the virus. The virus starts acting, probably you don't even know it yet, and then you start getting symptoms. You're at home, you have the virus hitting you, and then the inflammatory response starts happening and the clotting. And that's when you start attacking that in the hospitals. Is that right? It's not so much the virus?
That is correct. That's what we're doing. What we're doing is we are controlling the damage that the virus is doing on your body. And I want to make sure that the viewers of your show understand that. We're not killing the virus. What we're trying to do is we're trying to control inflammation and coagulation. Those are the things that people need to understand. Now, why is that important? Because you can kill all the virus in the world that you want. But if the virus already had that inflammatory response, or that response that Dr. Marik went on extensively as to what it does, I mean, you can kill the virus, but you still have the response. You will die. So that's why it's so important to start a treatment. And we have a treatment, and a treatment that, for God's sake, is cheap. I'm not telling you about, thousands of dollars of treatment options. This is something that is relatively inexpensive, is easy to do with medications that are readily available. I'm not talking about anything that is esoteric or, these are medications that have been approved by the FDA for several conditions for decades.
I'm going to bring it up on screen. I'd love to talk about it. I just put it together very simply so that people who are not medically proficient can understand it. So walk us through these simple steps so that people, again, we're not talking to doctors, but just normal folk can understand what this is.
It's fairly straightforward. So, first, we came up with a name that has to be something that we could all remember. And I guess we all hated math, so we are calling it MAPP, the Math Plus protocol. So M stands for methylprednisolone. And methylprednisolone is a steroid. It's kind of a cortisone-like agent. And it's an agent that is extremely good at reducing the inflammation. And, people say, well, there are papers out there that talk about other steroids. Well, we know that this particular steroid, this particular cortisone-like agent, is the best to reach the lung. Not only that, when you go and do some really fancy tests, you can see that methylprednisolone kind of turns off that gene in your body that gets you to have inflammation. It is really fascinating. Next is...
Now, doctor, before you go to the next one, hasn't there been a study done? I want to make sure that people understand this is safe stuff. There was a study done on steroids helping with COVID, correct?
Absolutely. There are a ton of studies that have been done. There's a study that was done using dexamethasone, which is another steroid. It's not as good as methylprednisolone, that actually showed improvement to hospital discharge and survival. So this is, like I said, we're not doing anything new. Methylprednisolone has been used for patients that have had viral pneumonias in the past. Nothing new. Nothing new. The only thing that we did was put them all together.
All right. So let's talk about number 2.
Vitamin C. I'm sure you are quite familiar with ascorbic acid. When you were a kid and you got sick, the first thing that mom and grandma would do on you was to load you up with vitamin C. They would give you the lemon and the honey with lemon and all those things. But it does make sense. Ascorbic acid, as well as the next component, which is thiamine, are two components that are integral to what we do, trying to stop that inflammatory cascade. And they act, both of them, at different steps, but together, in concert, they do very well. In addition, when you combine ascorbic acid plus a steroid, you get even better results. So this combination of methylprednisolone, ascorbic acid, and thiamine primarily deal with the inflammatory component of COVID. Then you add the blood thinner, which is heparin, which prevents clotting. It doesn't destroy the clot that you may already have, but it prevents more clots from forming. And one of the ways by which COVID kills you is a lot of clots, particularly in your lungs or in your heart, just accumulate. So what we're doing is preventing accumulation. We know from a lot of different studies that anybody that has COVID that is sick enough to get to the hospital has microclots. That means mini, tiny little clots. That's why it's so important to do the blood thinner.
Okay.
Now,
and then you have some optional additional pieces.
And that's the plus thing. And that's a little bit of you can customize it based to the patient. For example, zinc. I'm sure that you have heard that zinc is a great antiviral. It improves you getting better faster and things like that. Melatonin is a fascinating compound. A lot of people think that we only use it to sleep. Well, we are not using it to sleep in this instance. We're using it to modulate or modify your immune response to COVID. So it's kind of neat. Vitamin D. At some point in time, we had questions as to why people in the northern states had more mortality, a higher mortality than the ones in southern states. And one thing that became very obvious is that people that live in the north parts of the US, they have lower vitamin D levels. The ones in the south have higher vitamin D levels, and that's one of the theories as to why patients can get better now, can get worse. So it was a simple thing to say. It's a vitamin. It's not gonna kill you. It's not gonna do anything bad. Let's just go ahead and give it to you. Statins. What are statins? Statins are agents that are used to control cholesterol. But as agents that control cholesterol, one of the things that we have found is that they decrease the inflammation all over, especially within your tiny little vessels in your body. One of the ways by which COVID causes clots is, remember we talked about a lot of inflammation. Well, that inflammation also occurs within your tiny small vessels, within your tiny small vessels. So by giving you an anti-inflammatory agent for the little vessels like the statins, patients tend to do better. Famotidine is an agent that is known to help with the virus as far as not getting the virus to multiply too much. And lastly, magnesium. Magnesium is just an element that you need on every type of reaction in your body. So it's one of the things that we give to a lot of our patients. In addition, some of the other components that we may or may not use, sometimes may affect or may affect the cardiac cycle. So we need to make sure that the electrical conduction in the heart remains stable.
So all of this information, folks, especially if you're a medical person, there's much, much more detail at COVID19criticalcare.com. They have the full protocol there. So, okay, I just want to emphasize, we have a treatment that is being done at your hospital. Is any patient that comes in there for COVID pretty much get this?
Absolutely, every patient on my side of the hospital. It's interesting because now, the military is doing their own thing. They do use steroids, but they use a different steroids. They are not using ascorbic acid or thiamine. They are using heparin. So we're actually hopefully going to be looking at, how do we differ as far as outcomes go.
Right. So your outcome right now is 95%. I think Dr. Merrick's, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's an incredibly, I think it's 93%, something like that. He's close, near to you. Now, I just want to emphasize, what's the national average? Do you know what patients going in and patients dying? Do you have any feel for the national average?
I think that the problem is that there is under-reporting of some people that die or over-reporting in those areas. So I'm not sure that I trust the current national average. And then you have what you call these hotspots. Remember in New York, if somebody put a tube in your throat, your chances of leaving the hospital alive were less than 20%.
Right.
Some hospitals were talking about mortality rates in the range of 60 to 70%, even among everybody. So it really varies from one place to the other. I can tell you that no one has the survival rates that people like Dr. Marik and myself have, as far as I know, after talking to all my friends through, in many places in the United States.
Okay, and I know that this isn't being used broadly, and we're going to talk about why in a second. But let's just emphasize one more time: this is not new stuff. This is safe stuff that's been around forever that you're just combining and using and finding effective.
That is correct. That is
and
correct.
Cheap.
They're cheap. You compare these with some of these fancy antivirals or fancy anti-IL-6 medications. This is nothing. This is nothing.
Good. So why the heck isn't this thing being used everywhere, doctor?
Let me tell you, let me give you a story. I've been through this before. In the year 2005, I started cooling patients after they had a cardiac arrest. And, at the time, people were telling me that I was doing witchcraft and all sorts of goodies. And now it is the standard of care. When you early adopt something, especially something that comes from a group of your peers that do things, there is a lot of, I call it professional jealousy. I call it a lot of, it's like the politics that you see every day. You are seeing exactly the same thing within the medical field. That's why a lot of our colleagues are not using it. Now, in all fairness to everyone, this is a very young illness, at least relatively young, just a few months. And even us, as the Math Plus designers, we continue to modify our protocol. We're constantly adding things based on whatever we see is best for the patient, based on the data that we currently have.
Well, it seems like one of the pushbacks you're getting, I've read, is there hasn't been a trial done. Dr. Merrick addressed that partially. What's the problem with doing a trial at this point?
Well, you see, people want, a lot of doctors want, I need proof. And for proof, they want a big trial. Well, you know what? We don't have time for the trial. We're in the middle of a damn freaking war against an invisible enemy that is killing people. We don't have time for a large trial. I mean, I wish we had it, but personally, I would tell you, for me, it would be unethical. Imagine that I'm going to offer somebody 50% of my patients. I'm going to tell them, I'm going to give you something different, or I'm going to give you a treatment that I know that 95% of the patients go out.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not do it. I would just refuse to do it on the basis of ethical issues.
Interesting. So you guys have put together an organization, this loose group, Dr. Merrick, yourself, and other prominent doctors under this COVID-19 critical care. Is that right? Is that
That is
what
correct.
you guys
That is correct.
To get the word out, or what's the point?
Well, you see, I mean, all of us are ridiculously busy. I mean, we're working, we're taking care of patients. I mean, I used to, like you said, I used to write a lot. I haven't had time to sit down and write my observations of what we have. So we needed somebody to help us, put all of our thoughts together in a way that is digestible and simple for people in general to understand. Again, sometimes we're doctors. Sometimes we're not the persons that can educate at the level that need to be educated, and we thought that having all of us entrained in the same line of thought, try to give the same message instead of messages that may be not different but not explained the same way. That's the reason why we put together this coalition.
And you have other hospitals using it? Other doctors are using it?
Yes, I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, I get emails and texts and Facebook messages every day of people that have had their success. I have one of my Facebook friends start using it in Afghanistan, and and they're amazed as to how it works. I have some friends in Mexico that are using it. I mean, we've been using it pretty much. I know all of the people that I've known in critical care, at least they are trying it, and once they try it, they say, "Wow, this makes a big difference."
It's interesting that especially the U.S., the medical industry is very against vitamins, especially vitamin C. Any fear from? I mean, you obviously don't seem to be a guy that's afraid of anything, but any fear of pushback? I mean, you guys are pushing forward a protocol that has 2 vitamins in it. I'm sure you're getting pushback on this from that.
Well, I don't care. I mean, I don't care because if you tell me to pull away something that is working for my patients, I'll punch you in your face because I am saving lives with what I'm doing. And again, as you know, I'm very passionate of what I do, and I think it is making a difference. I know that there are a lot of quack doctors out there, giving IV vitamin C and telling people that will, make them live longer and stuff like that. And, there have been issues with that. But this is real. I mean, the science that was generated by Dr. Paul Marik on the vitamin C component, by Dr. Meduri on the inflammatory part, all the steroid stuff, you don't get anybody better than that. I mean, you may say that I have 800 publications. Well, those 2 gentlemen combined have more brains than me, and I trust them blindly. And I trust them to the point that I tried with them this protocol that saves lives. We can save a life by just utilizing a simple, dirt cheap treatment option.
And it can be available to anyone around the world. I mean, especially with it being cheap. It sounds like you have other countries that could easily use it as well.
Correct. I mean, in many other countries, one of the things, the only issue that we've had in some of the other countries is that they cannot find intravenous vitamin C. That has been the one issue. And, trying to give vitamin C by mouth to get you levels in the blood that are good enough is very, very, very difficult. But, we do what we can. But I can tell you, I mean, and anybody that has any doubts, just going to my Facebook page, which is open, and just see some of the comments that people put from time to time on the success of the Math Plus protocol from all over the world. I mean, this is something that I've never thought I was going to be able to tell people. It's like, we finally found something that makes a difference in COVID. At least it makes a difference in the sense that we can save your life. You don't have to die. Dr. Marik has been very vocal about this, and he says, we don't need to have any more deaths from COVID. And I agree with him fully. We don't have to get more deaths from COVID. So how can we do that? Number one, get to the hospital early. And number two, start the Math Plus protocol as soon as you hit the emergency department. I mean, I don't even wait until the patients get to the ICU or to the floor to start them on the Math protocol. I do it in the emergency department.
Can people walk in with the protocol and go, I want you to do this? I mean, to any hospital. How does that work?
It's interesting, yesterday I had a patient transferred to me from a very large hospital in the Houston metropolitan area for, quote, higher level of care. This guy had been there for 2 weeks. They were giving him God knows what. And the reason why the family wanted him to come here was because of Math Plus. He's on a respirator and things like that. I'm giving it to him late, but I'm hoping that I will be able to modify his outcome.
So careful, you might have everybody in the country coming. But my question is, could someone, I don't know how it works in hospitals. Can you walk in with a printed out Math Plus protocol and go, I need this on me? Is that a hospital doesn't have to do that, do they?
Oh, no. I mean, the treatment of a patient is at the discretion of the doctor.
Okay.
Simple as that. So if you go into the hospital and say, I want this, they will tell you what the hell is that and who gave it to you and, what is the data and blah, blah, blah. And you don't have time for a lot of stuff. So the simpler thing to do is just to go to places where you know that this is being done. And like you say, maybe I don't want this because I'm going to get flooded with patients from all over the place. But it is something that we need to understand. The way to control the mortality of COVID at the present time is early intervention. And the only way you can do early intervention is by going to the hospital early. So try to identify those hospitals in the country where this is being done, and then, just spread the word.
It'd be nice if there was a list out there that said, the Math Plus hospital list. So last question, doctor, what can people do to try to avoid getting to you? I know that there's different protocols you guys suggest as far as taking before you even get COVID, when you're at home. Is there anything that you can give recommendations to people?
Well, I think that the basics of COVID and the simplest thing that people need to understand is that COVID is a transmittable disease. So if you can prevent transmission, you are good. I think that at the end of the day, we are all going to get COVID. Actually, I tell people there are two kinds of people in this world, those that have COVID and those that are going to get COVID. But what you hope is that not everybody gets COVID at the same time and overwhelms the hospital system and things like the ones that New York saw, the ones that Italy saw, and the ones that actually we saw in the last couple of weeks. So the first thing is, try to avoid that contagion of a lot of people. How do you do that? Fairly straightforward. Keep your safe distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. It's a no-brainer. Keep your distance. Wash your hands and use your face mask. That does the trick. A lot of my friends and patients ask me, do you have like any prophylactic treatment? I mean, can we take something not to get sick? And the data is not there. I take a lot of vitamin C every day, but I live in a COVID unit. So, and I'm doing that all by myself. There is no data that this may work or not work. I just feel fine with it. And I guess, if my body doesn't need it, I will just get it out of my system. So it's not a big deal. A lot of people have asked about, hydroxychloroquine and many of the other more controversial issues. And I call them controversial because, as you know, COVID has been politicized up to the wazoo.
Yeah.
COVID it's a political weapon. I'm serious. I mean, it is incredible on both sides. And I'm a doctor. I'm in the between. I'm not on one side. I'm not on the other. And there is a role for a variety of different medications, and we shouldn't politicize them. Everybody get together and look at what you said, what can we do to prevent this from happening? Can I give you a medication? Can I maybe the simple education, which is what needs to be done. But the problem is that as Americans, we're not doing a good job. And I think that as Americans, we could do much better in what we're doing.
I said that was my last question. I know you got to go. I've watched some of the media that you've had, and I don't really see very much media talking about Math Plus. I'm assuming you probably mentioned it to them. Are you finding the media not pushing it out there? What are you finding? Because it's frustrating to me not seeing it out there more.
It's funny, because I brought the media into my into my hospital many times. And some of them actually did mention it, but every time they come in, they round with us, they see that every patient is on Math Plus. I explain to them Math Plus, and then when they get their media thing out, I mean, some of them may say he's using this. Some of them even say that we're using an experimental protocol. There is no experimental, nothing here. This is not an experiment. This is a protocol that works based on medications that are fully approved. It's not like we're using any strange substance. This is something that works, and people need to understand that.
Doctor, I got to let you go. I know you need to get back. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for being out there and letting the media come in and seeing what you're doing and letting us hear from you today in this incredible protocol. Thanks very much, and stay safe, please.
I will. Thank you very much.
So, doctor, what about the idea of the vaccines coming? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's what I call wishful thinking. And let me explain it to you very simple. Step number one, find a vaccine. Let's assume I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to tell you, Sean, I have today a vaccine here in my hand. Okay, step number two, you need to produce a vaccine. Well, in order to get a little bit of herd immunity, to have people immunized, you need to immunize 60% of the global population. Global. That's about 5 billion doses. So I'm going to tell you, Sean, go ahead and produce 5 billion doses. Okay, that's 5 billion doses. Okay, let's assume that Sean says, hey, I have this company in China that can manufacture all of these things. Poof, here you have, I have in my hands 5 billion doses. Now you have to distribute them around the world. And of course, you're going to have, political issues and who does it go to, who does it. I haven't finished. No, it comes. The best comes last. Wait. So now you have all these vaccines all over the world. Now you have the real problem. Convince people to get the damn vaccine. That's the real issue. Why do I say that? Because if people don't want us to give them the flu vaccine, I mean, my own colleagues, I will tell you 60% of them don't get it. They don't get it. You think that people are really going to go ahead and get a vaccine that is brand new and just say, go ahead and put it in me?
Yeah, but isn't that why the media, I got to tell you, doctor, it really feels like the media is working in concert with the vaccine pharmaceutical industry, because they're trying to scare us so badly that we're going to line up around the block with this vaccine. It really feels like everything is being pointed towards this darn vaccine.
Well, and again, it's wishful thinking and things. I hope that, it can be done. But I also like to be realistic. For the vaccine to work, you need to vaccinate a lot of people. People are not going to let you vaccinate them. And then you have the anti-vaxxers and you have the whole other area. This is going to get ugly if we think that the vaccine is the panacea. We need to look at treatment options. Eventually this is going to go away somehow. And please understand, America has gone through a variety of different epidemics and pandemics throughout its existence. We have survived. Yeah. But we have also made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes in the 1918 pandemic. And that's why we had that second peak. And if we don't do what we need to do at the present time, which is your safe distance, mask, and wash your hands, we're going to go to that second, what I call the real second wave in October, November, and we are going to get in trouble. So instead of thinking of that magic vaccine to come in and fix everybody, we're looking at one treatment intervention that can save the life of those who are going to be very sick in October, November. And to be honest with you, I think that the Math Plus at the present time is the only reasonable alternative. Can this change? Of course it can change. And I'm open. I mean, you can clearly tell that we think outside the box. Yeah. So this may change, but people need to understand that rather than wait for a vaccine, why don't you just, try not to get the illness, all of you at once. And if you get the illness, go to the hospital early. And if you go to the hospital early, make sure there's a hospital that can provide you with Math Plus. We are not making any money out of this. If people think that we're making money out of math, we're not making any money. I'm not a consultant for any of the companies. These are products that are not over the counter, but these are products that, they don't have any, they're not proprietary anymore. So there is nothing. I don't get anything out of this other than the satisfaction of helping others and saving lives. That's why I went to medical school for, to save lives.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Dr. Joe Varon, that was an amazing interview. This guy is doing his job. That's his deal as a doctor, is to get out there and save people. What I don't understand, well, I do understand. I guess after a while you have to say, I understand. The medical community in the U.S., particularly, I don't know about around the world, are pushing back against this protocol. You have a group of doctors who came out with it. These are all components that work. They're saving lives, yet it's not being used because it hasn't had this big double-blind test, which he just said in all of the doctors, Dr. Merrick that I spoke to, and also there's another doctor I spoke to in this group, they don't feel ethically that they can. They know this works. So how do you withhold this from a patient in a trial? 50% of those who have COVID and look like they're on their way to death don't get this protocol, and 50% do. They know that it helps 95% of the patients. So they're going to let those 45% on that side that don't get it die? They can't do that as doctors. So I don't understand that. I hope and encourage others to actually use this. Go to COVID19criticalcare.com and look at the full protocol. Share this. Do you feel like this is important to you? I got to tell you, if we can get the death count down, waiting around for a doggone vaccine, the $8 billion now has been pushed out by the U.S. government to these pharmaceutical companies. $8 billion. This is a big business, guys. This is, as Dr. Merrick said in the last show, medicine is business, and this means lots and lots of money to these pharmaceutical companies. And I've fully decided, because I saw a New York Times article a few days ago that was so blatantly frightening. I'm a writer. I've written a book before called How to Press America's Reset Button. You can go to Amazon if you're interested. That was some years ago. But I'm a writer, so I understand when you write something, you write an article, you pick out your words very strategically. You are trying to create a certain emotion and reaction in your readers, because you have to keep them engaged. This writer particularly, I may do this on a show, I went and highlighted the words he was using and the phrasing he was using in this article about COVID, and it was frightening. That to use these inflammatory words and I really think that what's happening is there is a concerted push to make sure the population stays so scared of this thing that when the vaccine comes out, people will line up. They're already talking about a lottery who gets the vaccine first. So it's just who am I? I'm just a guy telling you what I see. I think that there is I'm not saying this is real. If you get sick, most people don't, 80, 90% don't. But if you get sick enough that it goes into your lungs and you have problems and you need help, that's serious business from every doctor I've talked to. So the media, in my opinion, is trying to keep this thing as frightening as possible. Don't go out. Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. I looked at the other day, I was going to drive between one city and another city. It was quite a drive. And the first thing that came up on Google in a big red box was the CDC's advice about traveling. And basically the advice is don't travel anywhere. Everyone stay home. Maybe that is the solution for a while, but eventually we got to get going. But I think the media is definitely pushing us towards being really, 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 really scared. So we all get that vaccine. And the problem is the vaccine is not proven in any way it's going to work. The vaccine for the common flu, the flu vaccine doesn't necessarily work. It's not that efficacious. Anyway, a lot of stories about vaccines. Dr. Merrick in the last show talked about that. Go to SeanBurke.net. That show is there. It's also on my YouTube page and also on Facebook. I appreciate you listening. If you care about this, and in my opinion, the reason I'm doing this show and the last show that I did is the most important of the 170 shows I've done. If you care about our country, because this is crippling our country, we are changing. We are losing our small businesses. We're losing here. This is not good. We're dumping money out. To have the federal government dump as much money out, that is not good for our country. So if you care about our country, push this out. Let others know about it, so we get some kind of groundswell going as far as people understanding. They can walk into their doctor and go, use this. At least it'll push it on the medical community. Because if we can reduce deaths down to 95% of those who go in the hospital, that's just who goes in the hospital, they live. If we can get it down to, oh yeah, if you do get COVID and you get in trouble, there's a treatment that handles it. It's not that big a deal. We can get back to life. We can get back to business. We can get back to actually congregating and gathering again. Okay, I can keep going. Thanks very much for listening. SeanBurke.net. If you have anything you want to say to me, hey, Sean at SeanBurke.net. Appreciate it very much. Be safe out there. Please share this if you feel compelled as I do. Adios. Bye-bye.